What's up? What's up? What is up? Man, it's been an interesting day. It's been a busy day. It's been a good day. All right. So, I wanted to get started here, and I have a really special guest. But before we get to the guest, really quickly, our guest today is a Navy veteran, and anytime I do a podcast that has a veteran, guys, we have a lot of people with means in this in this audience. I would very much like if you guys go to the Texas Valor Project. Texas Valor Project. Anytime I do a veteran, I'm going to do it every single time. It's a charity for veterans and first responders to get the traumatic brain treatment that they desperately need. This charity, by the way, if you check it out, it's amazing. They get these doctors to donate their time. I mean, there's still money involved, but they can do it for a lot less money. And these people really need the treatment. They need the treatment to live at least somewhat of a normal life. And so it's a great charity. And I'm proud to actually, have donated a substantial amount of money, some fundraisers, from some fundraiser stuff that I've done, and I'm hopeful that you guys will donate, anything you can. It's a great charity. Okay, so really interesting. So I have to give a little bit of a shout out here today. I got a message from. I got a message from a guy, Devin Murphy, who does like on-sites and whatnot for different companies. And he has it's like a coaching and training company, but he does a lot of other things too. He call by call management. I mean, you can talk to him directly. A lot of you guys know him. Devin actually sent me a picture today. I for the life of me, I can't pull it up, but he sent me a picture today, and it was literally, he did like ride-alongs today with he was doing ride-alongs today, and he literally was like demoing stuff, like they sold a job or whatever it was, and he's like he's in Addicts demoing. I mean, that's, you want to talk about a ride-along, sell the job and then go ahead and start demoing and doing the install. It was pretty cool stuff. So I got to give it up to Devin. So shout out, buddy. All right. So Ian's on today. I have next week I got Joe O'Grady coming on, who runs the Service Profit group. He's a character. And then after that, I got Kathy Nielsen coming on, the Operations Excellence group. And I also have Gil Cavey, the host of HVAC Uncensored, is coming on the 15th, and then Kathy will be on the 28th. So pretty sweet. Some really cool guests coming up. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Mr. HR Guy himself. Ian, what's up, buddy?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. So, Ian, a lot of people know you. Some people don't. Some people will listen and they'll say, well, who the heck is this guy? And why is his name the HR Guy? So what the heck, man? Who are you? What do you do? Why are you on this show?
I'm simply that. I'm the HR guy. I work for the trades, and that's really my entire life. I got my kids, and then I've got giving advice. That's all I have time for. So, but yeah, I did 6 years in the Navy. I've been rolling along. I started off as a technician, and I just kind of worked through advanced electronics in the Navy for 6 years, got out 4 months before 9/11, went to customer service, worked retail, Black Friday at Best Buy, the whole deal. Did all of that while picking up
you were in the Geek Squad.
I transitioned from sales to Geek Squad Service Center, so fixing all the stuff that they hide behind the counter. And then, funny enough, I found my way to HR because I got annoyed at a senior technician because I had to fix all of his crap.
Yeah.
And I got a little too aggressive.
So it's kind of funny, actually. I go back and forth. Sometimes people ask questions, and I'll, the HR guy here, Ian, will post something, and I'll be like, "Oh God, it's so boring. Can you stop with the boring stuff? Everything's so boring." It's so true. But the businesses that you work with have to operate with the boring stuff, or else things go bad. Lost. Right? You were just telling me something today. Like somebody called you, and right, some dude was, I don't know, drunk on the job or something like that. It's like, okay, well, what do I do?
It was after work. He called and wanted to vent about some questionable things going on with one of his customers, and he's trying to talk me off the ledge because I had just posted, which drew his attention, and so he called me up, and we're kind of like going back and forth, just kind of settling each other's nerves to hit the day. He probably went to sleep right after, but
yeah, you put me to sleep sometimes, buddy.
It's a curse of the trade, unfortunately. I don't make the rules. I just have to try to convince contractors to actually run their business by them.
You're such a party pooper, man. You ruin everybody. You just pee on everybody's parade, buddy.
Just call me Toby.
It's funny. Do you remember how we met? The first time we ever met?
Yeah. I do.
Yeah. Where yeah. You remember where we met? Where'd we meet?
We met at that party, didn't we?
Yeah. We met at a whiteboard. It was a whiteboard part. Well, it was supposed to be, it was a whiteboard party. Yeah. And
during COVID,
it was outside. Everybody showed up. It was actually a lot of people there. Actually, yeah. Ken Goodrich was there too.
Goodrich.
He flew in. Landon was there. There was a bunch of people there. That was actually that was the beginning of that, or at least towards the beginning of that whole group. That was towards the beginning of the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd already been helping his company for a year before that, dealing with all the COVID regulations that were popping out everywhere. And, everybody that's been with me for a long time on Facebook saw me, I was just giving out advice and helping people sort out what they had to do to deal with COVID and everything that the government was throwing at them.
Mm. And so what happened from there? How'd that all work out? Like, I mean, I'm not sure.
So, yeah, it's fine. So shortly after that, we stopped working together. I stopped serving his company. He decided to jump over to ADP. And then I didn't really hear anything about him. I was doing my thing. He was doing his thing. And we were on a lot of the same business groups. And then he started burning bridges and he started getting booted from different business groups all over Facebook because of just him rubbing people the wrong way or saying something or doing something or, torpedoing relationships. And that's all their stories to tell. But then, he launched Profit Rocket Blueprint and I was approached to provide HR support. So we came up with a deal. I was working with Michelle and we set up a deal and I delivered services for 8 months. And then they just said, nope, we're done. We're cutting it. And what we owe you from the start of our arrangement, we're just not going to pay you.
So what were you doing? You were working through the group? You were working with their clients?
Yeah. They contracted me to provide the HR and safety support that I do for all my clients, providing it to their members. So they had a certain number of members. I get paid every month based on how many members they have. They got a steep discount on the retail pricing of what I do. And it was working fine. And then they just upped and decided, nope, we're done. I'm like, okay, fine. You want to cancel the deal? That's fine. You still owe me this. So, and that's what spurred the post today that got huge amount of reaction. I wish I could get that much reaction when I'm telling companies how to actually pay their guys legally or avoid getting sued.
Yeah, but that's boring.
Yeah, I get it. And people,
I'm just gonna I'm gonna see how many times I can say that's boring. I don't mean that seriously. I don't think it's boring. I know it's a necessary part of the business, and
I'll say it's boring.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure this out. So you were providing services,
Yep.
and then you were getting paid, and then all of a sudden you did all this work, and then what happened?
Funny enough, it came through that they started off having challenges and paying their bills, and I fronted them for the first several months. They had just started paying their full monthly payment to me, and then they just decided to stop. So it, you know, it's just silly.
So how long did you go?
It was about 8 months that we were from. We went live in March, and they pulled the plug in the last couple days of November
of 23?
of 2023. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I reached out. I told all the companies that I was attached to. I said, "Hey, they decided to cancel this. If you want to continue with me, give me a call. Otherwise, your account's going to be deactivated on this and on this date." And some of them came over, some didn't, and I just carried on. And they shut off all communication, just said, "Nope, we're not going to talk to you. We're not going to respond to anything. We're certainly not paying you." So that's where we're at today, is 6 months after starting collections process. I heard from the collection agency today saying, yeah, they're just hanging up on me now. After abusing and ridiculing them and all that. They got tired of that game, and they're just hanging up on them now.
Okay. You can't see this right now because of where you're at. This chat is extremely busy.
I actually can see the chat. I just can't respond to anything.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, look, I have a lot of questions, but I'm just gonna. All right. So, Joe, this guy here says, didn't you have a contract with them?
Yeah, I had a service agreement with them, just like I have service agreements with all of my clients. It's very simple, straightforward, no terms of separation, but it's very clear. I'm going to do this, and you owe me that for it, and that's it.
Were there signs though? Like, did you have any sort of like inkling, or was like the rug was just pulled out from underneath you? I mean, because here's the thing. Okay, there's a lot of talk. I'm gonna make myself a little vulnerable here, just because I probably, it is what it is. Look, there's people. I've been a part of some better practices groups that have been extremely helpful to me. Very like Nexstar. I was in Nexstar. I've been involved. I'm currently involved in Certain Path. SGI. These are really reputable groups. There's other groups I know that they're out there. So I mean, obviously, there's a much smaller group starting out. A lot, like the contractors for the most part were pretty small, right?
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of chatter, and I've heard this from a lot of different prominent guys that like, hey, be careful. Sheep's and wolves clothing, all whatever, wolves in sheep's clothing. I'm trying to figure out here. So was there any inclination, like from clients, from customers, from different people? Nothing. It was
there was absolutely nothing. I got a call from somebody that I had a 5-minute conversation with in that 8-month period, and he's like, "Do you have records of XYZ?" And just out of the blue, and I said, "No, I don't have that tracked. I can work on pulling stuff for you." And that was 3 days before I contacted them asking about a member status to verify that they're still involved. And they said, "Yeah, we killed the deal." Okay, you're already actually owe for the next month, but that's fine. So I'll go ahead and process cancellation, and we'll continue on. And
how many companies did you actually implement your processes, company handbooks? Were you working with? Were you on retainer with? Let's say.
Well, I'm not going to say how many members they had in the group that they were paying me for.
Okay.
But there was a number. I helped out. We wrote dozens of safety manuals, provided a number of employee handbooks from those members that chose to engage. Part of the deep discount that I give those types of groups is because I know not everybody's going to be actively involved, regardless if it's free to them. There's only so much I can do to get engagement. So I sent out HR tips, safety trainings. I was always available for on-call support, just like I am for all my other clients. There's no different status because they're coming through and being paid for by a business group. And very few business groups out there actually provide HR support included as part of their service. As far as I know, there's actually only one currently, and that's Service Nation Alliance. And
oh yeah,
I worked with the company that has that contract right now for 10 years before I opened up Big Picture. It's my mother's company.
Oh wow, it's like there's a pedigree here.
There's literally very limited options for HR in the trades. That's what makes me the HR guy. I've been doing this for 15 years with the trades, exclusively with the trades.
And it's not a small amount of money either, right? I think you said something. I mean, I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's 34 grand is what the invoice says.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the question came up again. Tim asked, he trying to figuring out how many companies went through. So here I'll answer that question because you don't feel comfortable with it. So he said dozens. So the answer was dozens. So yeah, Chase, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm looking, Chase says I'm looking kind of swole. I appreciate I've actually been hitting it pretty hard. I've been hitting it pretty hard. It was pretty good. All right. Mary has a question here. So when they sever ties with you, Ian, this is meant you weren't available to continue with their members. Okay.
Yeah. It just meant that they were able to transfer from Profit Rocket paying for their account. If they wanted to come over to me, they could come over to me without a setup fee or anything like that, which I had waived as part of the deal with Profit Rocket. So, I mean, in the first year, everybody that had access and continued to have access to me and chose to continue on, they received about $2,500 in value each because it was being paid for through this deal. So, I mean, but I reached out. I said, if you want to, this is canceled. So as of this date, you're not going to have access to our information and services anymore unless you contact me to sign up on a separate account. And some of them did, a lot of them didn't, because whatever communication, and I don't know. I didn't give it really two thoughts. Some asked me questions, I answered, and that was that.
Chase asks, was it a yearly contract, or I guess maybe
it was month to month, just like all of my retainers.
So they could sever ties. It's just that they had to pay you. Let me ask you.
No problem with the severance. You don't want my services? Fire me. That's fine. You don't think I'm providing value? Fine, fire me. No problem.
Let me. I gotta ask this. So this is what are you trying? The post, obviously. We discussed this a little bit. I'm curious. I'm guessing that the end result is you'd like to get paid for services. It's not a small amount of money to anybody. I don't care how much money you have. 34 grand's a lot of freaking cheddar. So
absolutely.
What is that really the goal at this point in time? Or is there another?
No, I mean, if people take it as a red flag for, to avoid doing business with them, that's between them and them. Mine is just, is it worth pursuing? Because I've never been forced into a position that I had to sue somebody. I've never had somebody skip out on a debt. I've never allowed somebody to build up a debt of 34 grand. One of the comments in my, in that post, showed a picture and, of something that Victor had posted earlier in the day. And then, he responded, well, if he wasn't providing services, why'd you keep hiring him? Well, that's fair. On the flip side, if he wasn't paying me, why was I continuing to provide services for them? Because there was always a story. There was a reason why they couldn't pay me right then, and continued on. And then it went into their September show. And then once they were clear of that, they started paying, and there was plans, and they were actively supposedly working to arrange payments to catch me up on what I had basically lent them. And then they said, nope, we're done. That's it.
Yeah. So Chase says, like, what kind of reasons?
So the like the just various things, like they had they couldn't access the money that was going through Stripe or something like that, and then they were pouring all the money, all of their available money was going um into their event, because it takes a lot of money to front load these shows and events and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
whether they're legit or not, or even hokey ones, are, I'm not saying Victor's events are good, bad, or indifferent. I offered to go and provide free support and help them run that thing and help them provide value to it, and I was just ignored. And it's like, okay, well, fine. I mean, I'll continue doing what I'm doing then. That was all I offered to do, all of that, no cost at all. Said, just get me there and I'll do whatever you want me.
All right. So somebody posts here. I'll state I had insight into the financials for Profit Rocket, and it was all over the place.
Yeah, it was a startup operation.
Sure.
They were putting a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff
and a lot of money into
software
it. Yeah.
development and staffing. And I mean, I still don't take sides on the business strategies. I'm not saying that, I've heard a ton of horror stories today, people DMing me all day long, the responses. And I'm not saying that what they're sharing or the business strategies or anything like that are good, bad, or indifferent. That's not my place. I'm an equal opportunity HR guy. My goal is to help companies be legal, not take strategies and business philosophy.
Were there other did you get sort of the feeling, or did you catch wind that maybe this was, you were not the only, you were maybe
Yeah.
you weren't the only one that was waiting for a check? Or
yeah, there's been stories for a long time about it, and about different things that may or may not have happened. And it's one of those that I don't have the information. I didn't, I thought this was a good thing. I saw the possibility of it. So that's why I agreed to, join Michelle, because she's the one that approached me, and she's the one that signed right next to my name on the agreement. And, I thought she was going to be a stabilizing force. And because I know Victor's had his ups and downs in various things, and that's his business and, those that he's interacted with. And I took a shot. It didn't pan out for me, but, it's one of those things that you still have to do what's right. And the only thing I'm speaking on is he didn't pay his bill to me.
Yeah. I guess maybe this is a cautionary tale too. I mean, in regards to, taking risky situations. And I know somebody else that actually, he made a comment here. He doesn't think he's going to pay you or do the right thing. The only way he might is if he feels the need to prove everyone wrong and gains extra motivation from doing so, just so he did it. I mean,
and that's fine. That would be a brilliant marketing move for him.
That's a good enough reason to be like, yeah, sure. Let me go ahead and settle up on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's all I really care about. If I get paid, I'll never mention his name again. I'll never speak on it. I mean, after, I make my final decision whether or not I'm going to actually, have my collection agency file the paperwork to sue him or not. Once I pull that trigger or choose not to, I'll never talk about them again. Because it's not about their business practices or what they're teaching their customers or anything else. This is purely business. I provided services as agreed. They didn't pay. Okay, so what am I going to do? I've never been in this position before, because I'm a small business owner too. So that's that's just where I'm at. I pay all my bills, whether I agree with them, whether I agree with what they did or not. I pay the bills. I even pay my lawyer.
Interesting perspective from Kathy, who's actually going to be coming on the show. And let me, for those of you that don't know who Kathy is, Kathy goes like company to company. She's one of the smartest people in the industry, period. She runs Operations Excellence Group. She goes by the Chicken Lady. And she does all sorts of stuff, call center, and she's a Service Titan guru. And but she says this, and this is actually true, because you're probably right. Like if you sold equipment and you jip your vendors, you can only go to so many vendors before you can't get equipment anymore. You can't operate a business. But if you hire a consultant to come in, or you hire somebody to do a service that's not a hard cost that you can float without, then unfortunately, that's the first person that's not going to get paid. And she says, as consultants, this is how we buy our groceries. Sometimes I think services get overlooked at different than product. Yes. Brilliant sort of.
Absolutely. That's why Chicken Lady's genius.
Mary actually says she is genius. Mary Elizabeth Tracy says, well, you waited 7 months to say a word. That's commendable. I don't think you're trash talking. I think you were being sincere when you asked, what do I do? Yeah. So,
yeah.
I
mentioned now one of his active current partners, working on one of the side programs that he has, came onto the thread and started, throwing some stuff around. I mentioned it once when it actually went down, to let people know that I'm no longer affiliated with them by their word. I didn't throw shade on their program or anything like that. And then it's gone through collections. I'm being contacted by my collection agency saying, if you're going to sue them, now's the time. And this is how we proceed. So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah. Well, man, it's so I have such sort of mixed thoughts too, because, I love the networking aspect of this industry. And one of the things that is a real lesson here. Okay, if you work in the industry, and I say this to all my people out here that are offering services or offering sort of coaching or whatever it is don't, be careful, because obviously, word travels fast. We're in an incestuous industry. People talk to each other, and there's no way that someone's not going to find out. If you're a good individual in this business, people are going to talk to you and talk. You're always going to have enemies, but people are going to say, this is an upstanding kind of guy, right? Upstanding kind of woman, right? But if you're not, and you're stiffing people, or you're doing the wrong thing, or whatever it is, word travels really, really fast. And that, unfortunately, is just the nature of the game. And you really have to be careful about, what you're doing. And case in point with, our other coach guy, okay, that is completely canceled, because he did something that was, just disgusting, right? He's sending nudes and whatever else out to people, and he got ousted. Straight up, and it went around, and it is, especially with the groups and whatever else. And so
that was a complete shock. That was a complete shock,
dude. That came out of left field. I couldn't even, I was blown away when I saw that. And I was like, wow. And actually, I didn't know this was happening. And he actually he wanted me to do like sales training for him. And then right as I was about to go, and he was talking to me about whatever it was, and then bam, and I was like, holy smokes, I couldn't even believe it. Jason Walker, who I love, and who was on this podcast. Jason, I love you, dude. My question, what is it that Victor does that makes people believe in his BS? I'm curious why people can't read between the lies.
First, I also met Jason face to face for the first time at that same event, at that same whiteboard party.
Yeah,
that was the first and only time that I've run into him. And second, charisma sells. Victor's an amazing salesperson. I give him full marks for that. He can sell anything to anybody, and that's what he's doing right now. And one of the barrages that I've gotten today is all about people saying that I made not even a directly supportive comment or questioning him, and I was blocked. So I spent my day responding to people on my post, and he's blocking people left and right.
Who's blocking? He's blocking.
Victor. Yeah,
he's blocking people.
That's what they're reporting. He blocked me after this all went down in December.
Yeah.
Well, you got to put up Blake's.
The last one.
Yeah.
This one.
Yes. He convinces
okay,
people.
For those that are
know if he's lying.
Hold on. Here's the deal. I'm by the way, guys, I just want everybody to know this, okay? So that if this is whatever, this is gonna I'm Switzerland right now. I'm getting information and I'm having a conversation. I've never had business dealings with the guy, right? I haven't, right? I've hung out with him in a social setting. I've gone to a couple of his events. I never got into business with him with anything he really did or whatever, but yeah. So, Blake said, no, he's not. He lies and manipulates. That does not make you a good salesperson. Well,
it doesn't make you necessarily an ethical salesperson, but if you get the sale, you're a good salesperson. You convince people to part with their money, you're a good salesperson. I mean, I only charge $200 a month, and he convinced me to lend him $34,000. I mean, how stupid am I?
Garrett says we went dancing at the Red Barn, though. It wasn't Red Rod, it's Red River, by the way. And yes, that was a lot of fun. Garrett, I did have a good time. Yeah, that was a couple years ago. Jeez Louise. The time flies, man. Hold on. Chase asked this. This is very interesting. How does $200 a month turn into $34K?
Well, and that's actually my retail price for my base services is $200 a month. The deal that I had with him was several months of all of his members, me fronting them and providing services and building up, while they built up this debt at the beginning of our relationship. So that's schmuck on me. I obviously see that now and not going to let that happen ever again. But
so, Christopher John asked, would you ever partner in a situation like this again?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
probably a little smarter with your contract.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. It by necessity, it's going to be, really my contract's not changing at all because I still don't believe in holding people hostage. While I don't think it was the right thing for them to do, they gave me no notice on cancellation. They didn't even inform me until I asked them a question about a member. And they said, yeah, we're canceling that. They never even actually told me. But the model of helping a business group with all of their, providing mass amounts. My goal, my operation, everything that I do is to help the trades. The more people that I can give this boring information to, the better I'm doing. I mean, that's how I sustain myself. That's how I feed my family. And, if I can touch more people and make less per person, I'll do that. I give discounts to groups.
Yeah. Dan says partnerships are awesome, but done correctly. Dan's an upstanding guy. He was on a couple episodes ago. The name of the episode is like glitching out because he glitched out like 15 times during the episode. Okay. So, man, this chat's crazy.
It is.
If somebody asked here, were you worried at all about hitching your wagon in terms of the reputational impact it may have? This is important.
I mean, it's one of those things that, like you said earlier, you're, Switzerland, and I'm, that's how I moved through. I worked with all of the business groups, Certain Path, used to be SGI. I was with the franchises when Bimax was still in charge. The, EGIA, I was there when CEO Warrior was.
But the question,
started.
the question. So yes, you've been involved. Obviously you're a reputable person. You know exactly what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were referring to the reputational implication of now being sort of like you were sort of hitched to that wagon. I'll answer that. No. He was trying to help contractors. Obviously Victor created a group with thousands of contractors that really were very involved, and actually I actually think that I'm not going to defend anything that happened, but I will say that I think the original concept of forming sort of like this group of small contractors running events and whatnot, like at its core was very helpful. In fact, the event that I went to in Las Vegas a few years ago, I thought was actually really helpful. There was a lot of helpful people there. So it wasn't like necessarily all bad. And I'm sure that there's contractors that have taken nuggets from, from the training that they've done or whatever. That is mutually exclusive to paying your bills.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said before, and somebody's on there saying be careful about slander. There has to be something inaccurate and trying to damage somebody's reputation. I'm not doing squat about that. I'm not qualified to say what the quality of the work that he's doing or what guidance he's giving business owners. This is simply, they contracted me to provide these services that nobody else can provide in the trades. I was providing them. I didn't get paid for the work that I did. That's it.
All right. Probably. No, I don't think anybody wants this. But I think, but I kind of think I should pivot here for a moment. And I would ask, I'll post this one last comment because it's long. It's Paul Redmond. Hey, tall Paul. With all due respect, people need to source info outside of Facebook and these groups. They become an echo chamber. There's a lot of good, no doubt, but the real industry is working and not on Facebook sharing best practices. I agree. And aside from this podcast, you guys, some of you guys know, like, I run a sales organization. I have for the last however many years. And I don't talk a lot about, business building and all that kind of stuff. And I keep that kind of off. I poke my head in every once in a while, but really the nature of this, by the way, the nature of this forum was actually to have people come on and tell their experiences. And I think that there wasn't enough of that, like people talking about experiences, and this is one of those things. And I think it's a good story to tell. I'm glad that you shared. Let me pivot for 1 second here. So here's what I'd say. So, in your experience, like, what's been your aha moment aside from this? Like, aside from this experience, what has actually been your aha moment?
So, I mean, I've had lots of aha moments over the years, and I've had amazingly lucky timing on different things. And, one of the biggest events that has happened in recent history was during COVID. I was actually scheduled. I was at the airport, like we said earlier, I went to this whiteboard party during COVID, and I couldn't mask during all of COVID. I literally can't mask because I have claustrophobia from my military time. Great. That was fun to find out. But Delta had a way to fly, so I flew. And then the next year, I scheduled an on-site visit down in Georgia. I was in the airport, ready to go through that clearance to fly thing, and Biden had just changed the rules. They couldn't accept any exceptions, except unless you were literally missing parts of your face. You wouldn't be exempted from wearing a mask. Like, okay, then I turned around and left. Within 24 hours, I was down hard with the Delta version of COVID. And I was down hard for like a solid month. I would have been stuck in Georgia not doing anything except for just being miserable with, anybody who was willing to support me during that time. And really, that really led me on a path that led to me, joining a faith in just last year. Because it's like that, it was the timing on it was like a hand of God, finger of God type of event, because I had zero signs, zero reason to believe that I was sick with anything. And within 24 hours of being denied on a flight that just the previous year I was able to do, and poof, it's there. And, from there, I've continued on and, devoted a lot of time to my community and everything else. And it's just led me on a really good path, even besides anything like this. It's how you keep some things, personal and business separated.
What is the so in all your dealings with different companies, I'd be curious what the wackiest shit that you've seen is. Like going into a company being like, what in the world is going on here? This is crazy. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen. What is it?
So people tend to behave when I'm actually on site everybody's towing the lines because they don't want to draw my attention. But when that is, one of the there's two crazy stories that I've got for things that people have called me about. One, new hire in training. He's out on site at this nice house with his, with the owner of the company doing the training. And this guy decides to steal silver spurs off the customer decorative boots in his entryway and stick them under his seat in the van, and stole some magnets. And it's like, and this guy, the owner was completely flabbergasted. It's like, where did this come from? This guy works for he's in the National Guard. He's, serving, and somebody just randomly does something like this. And how do you respond to it? What do you do? What liability is there? What do I have to do for the customer? So that was, it's just, people do the strangest things sometimes. The other, which is really funny, we get a call, and I can't remember the actual name of it now, but they say, look up this something philia and call me back. So we look it up, and it's the attraction or necessity of being disabled.
Oh.
There was a tech that was running around with a fold-up wheelchair in his van and a pair of crutches in the van. He's driving around, and he's got these things, and he would occasionally just feel the need to go up to the customer door in a wheelchair. Or he'd show up at company events on crutches with nothing wrong.
I've seen this happen before, but with like, people will make up like sob stories to invoke. Have you seen this? People will invoke a sob story so that you feel bad for them. And then either they're trying to sell you something, or they're trying to manipulate in some sort of way, but they come up with this sob story. And I had it happen to me recently, and I'm like, dude, this guy's feeding me this sob story. I find out later it's like complete bullshit. I'm like, that's
normally
crazy.
Is. But people can convince themselves of pretty much anything. One thing that we lack really across most of society is a sense of individual purpose. So people are looking for attention because they want to matter, but there's almost no avenues for most of the populace to matter for themselves. They live in groupthink. They're absorbed in the lives of others on TikTok and YouTube and all of that. And kids are staring at TVs for hours watching other kids play with toys.
Yeah.
I don't get it. But there's psychological factors involved, and that's where we dive into more boring stuff that you don't want to know about.
No, it's interesting. And are you typically, when you put together these books though, it's kind of like a cookie cutter, right? You customize some things in there, or are you customizing, every company gets a different customized handbook?
So what we do, we have built out we have 50 templates in our file system to start with, but it takes serious amount of work to actually build it out for each state and each individual company and what they're doing. So our safety program is pretty cookie cutter, but our employee handbook is custom built to every single company.
That's pretty cool.
Based on where they're at, what industry, what state, and how they want to run their business.
Christopher John says, no, go there. You said I'm not going to go there. Go there. No, it's true. Hey, and by the way, and so there's been a lot of viewers in here. It's probably the most amount I've had. This is probably one of the
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian. Well, I would say this, I will plug you, because after talking to you for a period of time and understanding what you do, I was like, wow, this is like a really essential part of a bit. I think a lot of people pay a lot of money for, to do these kind of things, and you're very accessible. So I'd say that, hey, maybe we can make back some of that 34 grand that got, that you got from.
I don't want to try to profiteer. People are contacting me.
You're not profiteering. I'm saying that I have, at this point in time, I can't even believe I could say this, with tens of thousands of people who have like listened to my podcast, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll use it. I'll help you. Hey, hopefully somebody calls you. And who knows, man, maybe you get a company calling you and asking you, to make
here you go
handbook, a boring handbook for them, and a boring compliance, and the boring OSHA, and the boring.
So here's the deal. Anybody who does choose to contact me, evaluate and sign up my services, if they mention your name, Everett, I will give them a $250 discount off my setup fee, and I'll donate $250 to Texas Valor Project.
Oh, look at that. That's awesome, dude. Dan says go Navy, by the way. That's pretty cool. It goes in line with your Dan's a Navy veteran too.
Excellent. Thank you for your service.
Let me ask you this. What is a situation that you've been through? I ask this on every podcast. Anybody that listens knows this. What is something that you've been through that and it might be the situation we just talked about, it may not be.
I got others.
But maybe a client, or maybe an experience that lives with you in everything that you do. It's just like an experience that you went through specifically in your field of work that stays with you wherever you go.
The nature of my departure from my mother's company. I spent my first 10 years becoming an HR pro and safety, consultant, working for my mother's company and building out this whole concept of HR and safety for the trades. And we've been doing great things. It was, kind of a gimmick thing for them at the beginning, but I turned it into a real business. And then, funny enough, due to an HR situation, both my wife and I had to resign because the one person in the company senior to me, other than my mother, decided to flip her lid when she found out on Facebook, or somebody told her that my wife was pregnant with our 5th child, rather than getting a personal contact. And she sent out this horrible message, just completely intolerable. And nothing was being done about it. And we had to resign. And this was the summer before COVID hit.
But why were they so upset about you having a kid?
I honestly have no idea what her deal was. I think, looking back 5 years later, I would guess that she was just feeling threatened because I was likely going to end up taking over the company if and when my mother decided to retire. She managed to survive in the company until this last fall, and she imploded, and they found out all sorts of stuff that she'd been up to while being unobserved and no check or balance. But that's where big picture started, was basically having to quit what I'd been investing my life and soul into for 10 years.
Wow.
And then going into COVID.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. So that must have been tough to walk away from that business after
it was family. Horrible situation. I mean, it was incredibly painful, and them shutting down my office. They kept a couple of the employees because they were based in California, and we had our office in Minnesota, and I had a team working for me, and they, shut down the office and kept a couple of my people on to work remotely. And, it was insane what we had to jump through. And, so I had to start from scratch, and that's how I became the HR guy, is because with the previous company, we always worked with, and they're a vendor partner. Comprehensive Employment Solution is still a great company. They got great services and programs. They're tied into all of the business groups. They're a vendor partner with Nexstar and Service Nation and Certain Path and all of that. That's where they live. They're not on social media. So when I had to start over, I started on social media.
Now it all kind of comes together. Yeah. So, and here you are joining groups and networking in with people. It's actually pretty brilliant. I'm glad. So today, how many clients roughly do you have?
It varies, probably around 250, 275 right now.
Wow.
Across 40 some odd states.
Wow.
And to answer Christopher's last question there, California is the worst. I don't know why anybody runs a business in California.
The question was which states have the most challenges for businesses, and it's California. Who's second? Oh, yeah. I'd like to know who's second. There
are
can I guess?
Five. There are the big five.
New Jersey?
Nope.
Really? Interesting.
You're close though. New York.
Yeah. Okay.
Illinois, Oregon, and Washington.
Yeah, the most litigious states. Let me guess, the easiest state to work in is, drumroll please, Texas.
Texas is really solid. They actually do have some sneaky hidden things. Places like Alabama, Arkansas are actually pretty solid places, but there's also no people there and no real, no bigger businesses there for giant population centers.
It's getting there. There's a lot.
It's getting there because they're trying to escape. People are trying to escape all the wackadoo states.
Yeah.
Here's a fun fact. Oregon is the only state in the country that legally does not allow employees to decide they don't want to take a lunch. If they refuse to clock out and take a 30-minute lunch, you're actually obligated by law to discipline them and ultimately fire them for breaking the law.
Okay, in other words, they have to take a lunch.
You have to take a lunch. Employees are not legally allowed to say, you know what, I don't feel like taking a lunch. Most technicians don't like stopping their work. They'd rather grab something in between jobs. Based on my experience, and I was a technician. At Geek Squad, they would kick us off the service floor, and say, "Go take your 30 minutes." Okay. It drove us batty.
Yeah. So, so you got to navigate the litigious states. That makes sense. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Do you think that some of those laws, like that are intended to protect the employee, do you find that they actually adversely affect the employee or the employer in many cases, that the law doesn't actually make sense?
So yeah, it makes sense. Most laws have a reason. So like all this talk about recent changes to the overtime laws and how much somebody has to make in salary to qualify for exempt status. That's all because of big box companies like Walmart and Target, who would put somebody as a manager, give them 2 underlings, not allow the underlings to work more than 32 hours, and then force that so-called manager to work 80 hours a week at this bare minimum salary. They're exploiting it. So these laws are targeting other industries, but the trades get caught in the crossfire because they're not designed for your type of operation. You have guys on the road all day, every day. They're basically one-man operations to, going into customers' homes and businesses to provide services and sell products and do whatever. So, oh my goodness.
Jason says, is that true for Arkansas too? Do employees have to take a 30-minute lunch?
So all other states, there's probably like 25 states that actually require employers to provide access to a meal break, but employees can waive it. You're not under any obligation to force employees to take their lunch.
So it's not
in California.
It's only mandated in Oregon. It's not even mandated in California though.
California, you have to provide access, and they've got some extra wackadoo stuff on top of this law, but they can waive it.
Okay, got it. So Christopher John says, how does an owner mentally prepare for getting rammed in the butt by the government? Is there a written procedure? And then the response was, hark to it.
Yeah. Hey, you warned me this was going to be raw and uncensored.
The whole podcast is raw and uncensored.
Absolutely.
I've never edited anything out other than there was like a technical glitch. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm ex-military. I'm a past technician. You can't offend me. You can't scare me, shock me, offend me, hurt my feeling. I don't have any. I'm in HR. So, but how you prepare to deal with the government is do everything you can to stay out of their crosshairs. Everybody's brother knows a lawyer. So you have to assume and you have to be mindful of anytime somebody leaves the company under crazy circumstances, you might hear from a lawyer. You just need to make sure your stuff's as buttoned up as possible. And the best defense is just to put up the front that you are too tough of a nut to crack. You're not going to roll over for the government. You've got this stuff. They're not looking for a fight. They're looking for easy targets.
Christopher says, do you have any experience with unions, stories with unions? I hear they're super easy to deal with.
Not so many stories because I try to avoid them. We've done handbooks for union shops, and it's an absolute nightmare. My wife hates doing it. I don't write handbooks myself. You don't want me writing a handbook because it's going to be 50 pages of if you screw this up, you're fired. But yeah, unions are tricky. There's actually some cool things about unions, like everything that I talked about overtime compliance that affects all of you guys. Unions get to actually ignore that because it's tied to collective bargaining. So if a union agreement says we're going to do this and we're going to pay this non-exempt employee commission only, there's no overtime, we're not tracking hours, you do that. And it's legal. The Department of Labor can't touch you because it's backed by a union and collective bargaining.
Jason Julian says Arkansas is a right to work state. Does that literally mean I can fire any employee for any reason?
Wrong verbiage. Right to work actually deals with being forced to join a union. At will means that, yes, you can fire somebody for any or no reason. 49 out of 50 states are at will states. The only one not, surprisingly enough, is still not California. It's Montana.
Interesting. So what's the deal with Montana?
I don't know. I don't have any Montana clients, so I haven't had to dig into it.
Okay, here's what we're gonna do. Okay. I typically try to keep this around, somewhere around now, but we got a little like the lube going here. There was a question here that asked, we're circling back around to the original conversation in regards. So Chase asked, you mentioned the post that Michelle was a lot of the cause of the disputes, but we've only really talked about Vic.
Because he's the public face. He's the one speaking out and that sort of thing. But he's the one that's out there. Just like I'm the face of my company. I have a team backing me up. He's the face of his company, but it's Michelle's name on the agreement. She's the one that approached me to provide these services, and
I'm under I
had the agreement with.
And Chase and anybody else, I'm under the impression that also I think she's an employee. I don't actually think she's an owner of Profit Rocket or whatever it's called. What is it called now? It's called something else. But I don't think it's I think he's the sole.
I don't know their actual corporate structure or anything like that, but she was, I was told she was the president or COO or something like that. And that she was making the decisions and part of how they, how she convinced me to do it is because I was working with her specifically, not, this was an agreement with her on behalf of the company.
Yeah.
And she was going to be lending credibility, stabilizing Victor's Wilder, things that he'd gone up and down over the years that we all know about and is well publicized. But, and there was nothing functionally wrong during the relationship. It's just how it ended and the balance due.
You're owed money. You did services. You didn't get paid for it. Okay. It's interesting too, because and I wonder and this is the question I have for you from an HR perspective. Okay. Let's say you're a manager, director, V-level or whatever for a company, right? But you're not on the ownership documents on the corporate structure. You may own shares of the company, but you're not an owner of the company on paper. is there liability? Like if let's say, okay, I'm the director of sales. I sign off on something, a legal document binding some kind of contract because I have the right to do that.
Yep.
Can I can be subpoenaed and all that kind of stuff, but can I be actually personally held liable, or is it on a company?
Yeah, it really depends on the nature of the offense and what is allowed. So things like sexual harassment, assault, things like that, those are passed through that you can go after people individually. Something like this, it ties to the company and potentially the direct owner of the company. But if she's if she's not involved at that level, she doesn't have enough ownership share or whatever the structure is, but it's going to go against the company. And, if they somehow manage to, avoid this or any, whatever ends up happening, you know, I'm not spending the rest of my life trying to nail anybody to the wall over 34 grand.
Yeah, that's not really what I was asking. I want to ask a question that's really, really, really important moving forward, especially for management and leadership in our industry. Non-competes and non-solicits.
So I'm not a fan of them in general because
let me ask the further question. So obviously the federal government repealed they're illegal.
The FTC, they're working on it. Well, it's like at the end of this month, it's supposed to go into effect.
Okay. Can you just talk about that? Because I'd be really interested because, and I'll say this especially because there are practice groups where if you're in a practice group like Nexstar and you wanted to get another Nexstar manager, you couldn't do it because there's a non-compete between members that I couldn't go, or non-solicit, whatever it is. I couldn't go to another company unless that owner gave permission. Now that's
within the Nexstar network.
Okay, now that's a separate agreement just to belong to the group, but federally and state-wise, what is the boundaries, if you can, speak to that?
A lot of people tried to say, if you leave us for whatever reason, you can't work in a company in our service area for the next 2-3 years, whatever the nature of it is. That type of agreement's been under attack for a long time because basically you're forcing somebody to move to feed their family. They have to move or drive insane distances to get out of your service area. And that's why this sort of ruling has happened. They're saying you can't restrict people from where they're going to work you can protect your company property. You can, go after people directly if they're sharing actual confidential information or proprietary or copyrighted information from one company and bringing it to a competitor, that sort of thing. But the bottom line is that you can't stop a technician from being a technician. There's a couple of caveats, people that are exempted from this ban if it goes into full effect. There's already some split decisions in courts. So it's going to get interesting during this next month. But if you're making over $151,000 and are under a non-compete, that you're still going to be held under that non-compete because that's senior management. We're not talking line level technicians.
That's most of the people. Like most of the people who actually sign non-competes are not technicians. Most of the people who sign non-competes are upper level management because they don't want their
I would have to disagree. I've seen so many companies having blanket non-compete, non-solicitation, non-disclosure agreements for technicians, CSRs, technicians, line level employees. It's just blanket stuff, and that's where I'm like, no. Now, senior executives, absolutely, and that's still allowed to a degree if they're involved in creating policy and strategy for the company. But
I don't really understand that's such an arbitrary number, 151,000. Anyway,
I don't know what they based it on. It's the FTC, it's the government. I try not to dive too much into that messed up psyche.
Yeah, Timothy said I've signed several as a sales rep. Now that I'm thinking back on it, yes, I have signed it as a sales rep, but I've heard they're completely unenforceable. Like they're almost unenforceable in a court of law. Yeah.
And then you have companies that set up salespeople as 1099 contractors and put them under a non-compete, which completely invalidates the whole point of the non-compete or the
You're an
1099.
independent contractor at
Yeah.
that point. Yeah.
So you basically just said, yeah, we're going to avoid paying taxes on you, but you're an employee. Yeah, that's what gets people. Yep.
Raphael, non-competes are so common, but are also trash.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're almost universally non-enforceable lower than management, and then even most levels of management. And that's what led to this ruling.
Okay, but now what? So, okay, well, I guess let's say you sell your company and part of the sale says
that is allowed.
Okay.
Yep. If it's a non-compete as part of a transfer of ownership, so all these PE firms or any other arrangement, partnerships, and everything else that's going on, that's completely allowed because it's part of the sale. That's part of a negotiated thing. It's not just we're holding this over your head so you can't work anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I think it was actually pretty illuminating at one point in time. And like, I don't know how many people are going to watch this or listen to it, but during the course of the actual live, I mean, it's probably been a couple hundred people in here. So it's been really interesting to see. Before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to say, to talk about it, and experiences?
I really just you have to understand that you don't know what you don't know, and you have to find a circle of people that you can trust, and just be watchful, because you never know where things are going to come from, and who's going to report or file a claim with the government, who's going to just try to screw you over, who's going to lead you down a bad path. And sometimes it's not intentional. I rail about ADP regularly because of their horrible HR advice, but that's because they're not HR professionals. They're just pulling the top line off of Google, and that's the information they're giving you most of the time. But that's why it takes a unique mindset to be HR for the trades.
You've got a lot of praise here. It's funny. I've flashed it up on the screen here. But it's like, dude, I mean, Timothy says, thanks for sharing, HR guy. Chase goes, genuinely a good guy. Jason says, thanks. Ian says, Kathy says, always says good information. Well, I'm glad that we ironed out some things. It's good to know the nature. I really hope you get your money. I really do, because I think people should get paid for what they've done. And I'm sorry that happened to you. And, I hope moving forward, I mean, maybe this conversation will shed light, and who knows, it'll help somebody. It'll help. Who knows? It'll help. Who knows? Maybe it'll help people who are thinking about stiffing Ian again and think twice about it, or maybe somebody else, or trying to balance your vendors. And look, running a business is not easy, right?
No,
like running a business has a lot of expenses. There's a lot of things you have to consider. And this is one of those things. You brought on a service, and you have to pay for the services rendered. Even if it was an arrangement. Now, let me ask you this. Would you accept an arrangement? Would you accept, hey, we'll make good on this. We'll accept an arrangement over.
I would listen.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd absolutely entertain. It's just one of those. It's just one of those things that you can't come to terms with anything if one side of it's not talking.
Yeah, you've got radio silence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good. Very good. All right, guys.
I think a lot of deep stuff.
I think this is a good time to wrap it up. Just remember, next week, I got Joe O'Grady, Service Profit Group, and then Kathy is coming on in a couple weeks, and then Gil Cavey, who runs the HVAC Uncensored podcast. So really love you guys. Once again, Texas Valor Project, guys. If you can donate, even if it's $10, $20, it really helps. You got to see these stories of these soldiers that came back. They need, these first responders. They need this brain surgery. They need this brain treatment, and this is how they can do it, because these surgeries are $100,000, $200,000. So anything that you can do. Awesome. Ian, dude, I want to just say thank you so much. And thank you, Tim. Thank you, Jason, Julian. Thanks, Kathy, Chase, all you guys, Blake. Really, really appreciate you guys. And we'll see you next week.